John Mauldin with us from Millennium Wave. John, you have a book with long-term charts. Give us a long-term perspective here with your criticisms of what we've seen over the recent months. What's the to-do list for the Obama administration? How should the president react to this announcement this evening?
Well, John, Tom is asking how the president reacts to this. What's the long-term implication?
That's a good question. I mean, the long term is what, Tom, you and I were talking about just last Wednesday, and it is the end game. We're at the end of the ability of developed markets to borrow money, and that's a process of its downgrading. It's going to be years and years. It was years in the making. It's going to be years and years as we go through it. I agree with Nouriel that it's a problem if we start getting austerity. The problem is we have to have it, because if we don't, we could end up becoming, and this is where Nouriel and I would disagree, we've had this discussion before, we become Greece. We have to begin to slowly reduce our debt over time, our deficit over time, to where we get it under control. And in one sense, this is a wake-up call to both Congress and the president, and say, hey, guys, get your fiscal house in order. Understand that this is serious. This is not a game we're playing. We're dealing with real money, real lives. The implications for this are staggering. I mean, are we going to see Ginnie Mae's downgraded? Are we going to see, the FDIC downgraded? Do they come back and say that Fannie Mae, it's just mind-boggling what they've done. But it's also mind-boggling what Congress and the president didn't do this last time by not saying, we really recognize there's a problem here, and we really recognize that we've got to do something.
Professor Roubini, do you have any sense of a manufacturing renaissance in the United States?
Well, to get a manufacturing renaissance, the value of the dollar will have to fall much more sharply. But we're in a world in which the U.S. needs a weaker dollar to grow its exports, because domestic demand is anemic given the leveraging. But the Eurozone needs a weaker euro to avoid the collapse of the periphery. And the UK needs a weaker pound because they have an anemic recovery. And Japan needs a weaker yen to grow their exports and avoid a double-dip recession. And even the Swiss are intervening now to prevent the franc from appreciating. So we're in a world in which everybody has weak domestic demand and would like to have a weaker currency to improve its net exports. But if a currency is stronger, another has to be weaker. And if a net exports of a country is better, the one of another country has to be worse, because the sum of all trade balances in the world is equal to zero. We don't trade with Mars or the moon. And therefore, we have now a zero-sum game in currencies and a zero-sum game in trade balances. And those currency tensions are going to lead to currency wars and eventually to trade wars. That's a problem we're facing. Everybody wants to grow themselves out of this problem to depreciation of their currency. In equilibrium, that's not possible.
Well, let me ask John Mauldin, Tom, whether he agrees. And there seem to be echoes in what Nouriel is saying of 1937.
Well, and I don't know so much about 37, but I absolutely agree. I mean, I was with 10 senators here Monday a week ago, and this was what I was telling them. I says, guys, you got to deal with the deficit, but the long-term problem you're going to have to deal with is going to be the currency wars, because as everybody tries to grow their way out of the economy, everybody wants their currency to depreciate, and then you've got countries like the Asian countries that are trying to keep their currencies down. Somebody's got to buy. And the traditional buyer has been the United States. But we've run out of the ability to borrow money, so we're running out of the ability to buy. And it is a really serious decision. Let me go back to something we were talking about off the air just a while ago. I think S&P now is in a situation where they're going to be forced to look at downgrading France. How can they leave them AAA? If they've come to the U.S., they're going to have to go after country after country after country. Otherwise, it becomes clear that going after the U.S. was a political decision. And if this was a political decision, it calls into account the entire credibility of their company. So I think you're going to see a series of downgrades that are coming. And I look at the probability of now downgrading U.S. credits and and what the repo market does. we're going to end up having to rewrite laws about what's acceptable collateral. I mean, Monday morning, bank after bank, credit company after credit company is going to be picking up the phone and saying, do you want to maybe just change this agreement a little bit?
The Fed seems to say that they're going to be okay. I know Adam Johnson has a question for you here, John.
Okay.
In the case for a race to the bottom, right? Devalue your currency first, get ahead of the other guy. But also, it begs the question, is there an advantage to being first? Because effectively now, in so doing, you're able to get ahead of the curve in ways that other countries aren't able to. You don't have that pressure being AAA. You can do what you need to do to try to stimulate the economy. Is there some sort of strange or advantage to having been first and being downgraded first?
What does this create, Adam asks, a sort of a race to the bottom when you're talking about kind of competitive currency devaluations? And is there any advantage to the U.S. having been downgraded? So by doing that, by devaluing their currency, they face less of a credit risk?
The reality, I think, is that in the ugly contest between the yen and the pound and the euro, the dollar is actually the prettiest ugly girl. And I actually think the dollar is going to strengthen probably significantly over the next 2 or 3 years, which is going to create problems for us. And it's going to go right back to Nouriel's contention that we're trying to deal with export issues. It creates tensions in Europe. We're at the end game. I mean, you know, that's what we were talking with Tom and everybody about. We're at the end of the debt super cycle, and we're just going to have to live through 5 or 6 years of some serious volatility. We will get through it. The world doesn't come to an end. I mean, as I laughed, I said, we got through Jimmy Carter, okay? I mean, we got through the Depression.
We can get through S&P.
We will get through S&P, and we'll get through this. But it's going to be some volatility. And you need to make sure that your portfolios are adjusted for that. You need to think about how you want to get through this.
Yeah.
Because we will come out on the other side, and there's going to be a ton of opportunity. I'm actually a raving optimist in the long run. In the short run, not so much.
We haven't had
The light at the end of the tunnel might be the one of the incoming train wreck. So I'm not sure.
I really actually do believe that the 2020s are going to be fabulously wonderful. But getting to the 2020s, we've got to get through this debt super cycle. We've got to restructure. We will do it.
Okay.
It's just... it's just the question of now, how do we go about doing it? Maybe this will be a wake-up call to Congress and the president.
Tom, we got 9 years to go before the 2020s.
Well, thank you, Michael McKee, Nouriel Roubini, John Mauldin.